I went to Roosevelt High School. I wasn't much of a joiner. I didn't really like people, didn't really like drama, so I kind of stayed to myself, went to school, went to work, did my homework, and graduated. People think I'm lying when I tell them I never did drugs till I was 28 years old. It's the truth. I didn't. I didn't get why somebody would throw their life away over a substance, over a powder in a bag. No, I didn't get it. It came about because I let a boy talk me into doing drugs. He convinced me that if I did it one time, that I wouldn't get sick. So I let him put a needle in my hand, and he shot 3 bags of heroin into me.
My name is Beth Chanella. I'm a sergeant for the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office in the jail division. 23 years ago when I started at the jail, you very rarely saw somebody who was addicted to heroin, and now the majority of the people that are coming into jail are addicted to heroin.
What was my life like growing up? Until I was 10, it was all right. I spent a lot of time with my mom. My dad worked a lot. Once I turned 10, it pretty much sucked. My parents got divorced. My dad beat me. I had to take care of my little brother, who's incarcerated now. I pretty much went to school, became a mom at 10. When I was 14, I moved in with my mom, kept going to school. I went to SUNY Albany, originally pre-law, came out double major in English and education with a minor in child psychology, but I stopped going because I had my first child.
My mother was an alcoholic, prescription drug abuser. My father was an alcoholic. I have no idea why it skipped me and it went to my kids. I have 2 children that are addicted to heroin, one who's in prison right now, and he's been there for 5 years, and a second child who's just gotten out of prison, who's struggling because she has to stay in a homeless shelter. My son, I had to set him up with the drug task force because he was going to die. He went from a 240-pound football player at Roosevelt to a 160-pound drug addict. My son, I lost 5 years of my life with my son because he's in prison, and it's tough for me. And he lost another year of his life because when he was in prison, every single gang wanted to recruit him because he spent a year in county jail. So he was no longer a drug addict, scrawny drug addict. He was now a 215-pound muscular kid. So every single gang tried to recruit him, and since he's been in prison, he's been cut 3 times. The last time requiring 4 stitches in his face. He purposely grows facial hair because it's harder to cut through, to get to his skin. And they say, the message I got from my son, I actually spoke to him today, was gangs are where cowards go to hide. So he refuses to become part of any gang, to stay safe.
In September of 2014, I decided that I had been through 4 C-sections, an abusive dad, an abusive boyfriend. Withdrawal couldn't be that bad. And then I was just going to stop, that I couldn't take it anymore. It just got to be too much. And it was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I threw everything away and just woke up the next day, and I was sicker than I'd ever been in my life.
I've seen people lose their kids. Part of the job that I do at the jail is working with CPS and DDS, so social services and child protective services, where they come in and they get to visit their children there, and I set up visits so that the kids can come in and see their parents. I've sat in on meetings where they've had to sign paperwork to remove their kids from them. So it's really, really heartbreaking how much this drug destroys. It destroys families. It's destroyed my family. I watch it destroy a lot of families, unfortunately, on a daily basis.
And I fell asleep and woke up 5 hours later, and all my kids were awake, and I woke up to my stepfather and my ex-sister-in-law in my house, and my kids had trashed my house. My son was a baby. He was only 14 months old. He had the worst diaper rash I've ever seen on a baby. and my daughter had burnt her hand trying to make chicken nuggets for her little sister. And honestly, my kids could have died. And they took my kids. That was probably the worst long-term effect, but I eventually lost my car and my house, and then I went to jail, and then I went to prison. So, you know, you lose everything. It's not just one thing, it's everything.
When somebody comes into jail and it's a first-time drug offense or it's related to a drug offense, they're giving a lot of second chances. Probation will step in, or they'll be given the opportunity to go to transitional housing, which is like a house where you share with a whole bunch of people, and there's programs going on, and there'll be counselors there that can set you up with Medicaid, so if you have to go to drug rehab, different programs that are out there instead of being incarcerated, so alternatives to incarceration. And Sarah was afforded the opportunity twice, and twice she ran.
They put me in 2 different programs that were more like holding tanks waiting to go to real programs. And the first one that she came and found me when I left was Mark Crisis Center. That's a place you basically sit at and wait to go to a real rehab or a real program. That place was ridiculous. The counselor wanted to send me somewhere different every week. They yelled at me constantly, and I just couldn't stand it.
I spent countless hours on the streets looking for her. And the first time I did find her, she was in a pawn shop on Main Street, and I wound up literally pulling her out of there physically, and we almost got into an altercation. She actually was not under the influence of any drugs. She just happened to have a bad day because it was her daughter's birthday and she didn't want to go to jail that day. So I picked her up. After a brief argument, she got in the truck. I took her to get something to eat, and then we walked into county court together, and she turned herself in.
I honestly wanted to go back to jail. The one thing addicts need is consistency. That's the one thing that you always find is a drug addict needs consistency to learn anything. And when you're stuck in a place where the only thing that's consistent is the inconsistency, you will go nuts.
The second time she ran from her program was Thanksgiving. I brought her son, Colton, who lives in my house, who's 3 years old, who I'm going to be adopting because she's not going to be able to get him back in her custody. I brought him up there, and her daughter Sienna was there, and we had a nice little luncheon type thing, and that evening she ran from the program. And once again, I was out there looking for her. She ran with another girl, and the mother of the other girl actually the father wound up picking them up. And when I was at work, she called and said, "They're here, they're at my house, they're sleeping. Your daughter's been beaten up pretty badly." She had a black eye. She had bruises all on her back. She had bruises on her chest. And she said that she had been beaten pretty bad on the street. And I got the heads up that probation was on their way with the sheriff's office. And they wound up picking him up and taking him back. And I think that was Sarah's last chance. I think that's what sent her to prison.
I ran from transitions because they wanted me to go to a program that was 18 months long. It was 18 months of intensive inpatient run by nuns. If I couldn't make it through 90 days run by normal people, I wasn't going to waste my time. I don't want to knock program, but most of them, you can fake your way through them. I didn't want to be in an environment like that. I actually wanted to change. And you can't really do that with people breathing down your throat trying to tell you how you're supposed to figure out what's wrong with you. You really need to figure that out yourself. Nobody can tell you what's wrong with you. Like, you really need to figure it out yourself.
We do a lot of tours in the jail with kids. Recently we had Roosevelt in there, and I always tell my own personal story of how it affected my own kids. And people are surprised because I work in the jail and I work in the sheriff's office, and actually my older 2 children that have gone through the prison system because of heroin, their father also works there too. Drugs affect everybody. It doesn't just affect the people that don't have, or the people that are Section 8, or the people that are on food stamps, or the people that are on welfare. It affects everybody. Every single family should be thankful when it doesn't affect their children. So if I had anything to say, the only thing I would say is just don't use any drug. And if you need help, get help as soon as you can.
Help yourself before you kill yourself. That's really the only thing I can say to people that are on drugs. Figure out why. Figure out why you're on drugs. because that's the only way you're ever going to stop. You can get off them temporarily, but until you figure out why you use, you're going to keep relapsing. That underlying thing, whatever it is that brings you to that level, you're going to keep relapsing. And to the people who are indirectly affected by heroin or drugs, there's nothing you can do. As sad as that is, there's nothing you can do. Don't enable, but you can't do anything. You can't make those people stop. They're not going to stop till they're ready. You can't force them into rehab. You can have them arrested. They'll do drugs in jail. They'll do drugs in prison. They'll do drugs when they go home. You cannot make somebody stop doing drugs. I've been on both sides. I've chased my brother around high as a kite, and I've been chased around high as a kite. People don't stop till they're ready, and you can stress yourself out, and you can make that person your life. But then if you're trying to make somebody stop doing drugs, then you're just as bad as they are, because you become an addict because you're addicted to trying to stop that person from doing drugs. So if you have your addict and you have the addict. I mean, either way, that person's not going to stop till they're ready. So, I mean, if you have an addict in your life, I know it's going to rip your heart out, but you can't stop them. You can't. No matter how many times they overdose, no matter how many times they go to jail, they're not going to stop till they're ready. So for anybody who has an addict in their life, you just got to let them go, because you can't help them.